Let's go to the hooks in the React.js. Okay. In React.js, we have seen on how to create a component. Okay. And there is a special concept called as hooks in the React.js. Okay. What is a hook in the React.js? First, I'll tell you with one example. Okay. Every component will have a state. What is a state? If you want to hold any data for your component, okay, if the component has any data, at this moment, this component doesn't have any data. But imagine if the component has any data, we should ideally keep them inside the state. Okay. If you want to hold any variables, if you want to store any variables for a component, we should ideally store them in the state. We should not store them directly. And the component data itself is called as state. Okay, let me go and try to quickly explain this example, what exactly I mean by this. So for this, what I do is I'll try to maintain one counter component. If you see for this greet component, this component doesn't have state on its own, means it doesn't have any data on its own. What exactly it has? Whatever the first name, last name, address, city, whatever it was trying to get, it was trying to get from its parent component. It was trying to get from its parent component. Okay. But if you want to have the component have its own state, I'll try to demonstrate that example now. Let me go and create a new component called as counter component. Okay. So what is this counter component? The objective of this counter component is objective of the counter component is I want to create a variable called as counter. Okay. Display it in the UI. Have a button to increment the counter. This is what I want to do. Okay. Have a button to increment the counter. This is what I see. So for that, let me go and try to define the counter component function counter. Okay. So what I do is I'll try to have let counter equal to 1. Then what I will have is return. So what I can have is I can display the return. Counter value is okay. So this is what is a standard counter and how we are going to display the counter also. Okay. So here what we are doing is we have the counter. So now this counter is called as state of the component. Whatever the counter variable you have, right? This is called as state of the component. Okay. Now what I'm doing here, I went and declared one variable, and this is typically called as the state of the component. I'm going and displaying it in the UI. Now, if I want to make use of this counter component in my app component, what exactly I need to do? So first thing we need to do was export counter. Okay. We have to say export default counter. Okay. Once we export this, if I want to use in my app.js, what exactly we need to do? Once I've defined my component, I put into the counter here. Now let me go and try to import this. Like if I want to import this, what exactly I need to do? if I just say counter here, it should automatically import it for me. Okay. If I just say counter, it should go and automatically import for me. Now what I do here is I'll just go and comment all other code so that I don't interrupt with that. Then I want to use my counter component. How can I use my counter component? I can just go and use the counter component as this fashion. That's it. So now if you see my application will try to run my counter component in this fashion. So what exactly I'm trying to do here was I just declared the counter value as 1. Okay. So the counter value is considered as the component in React.js. So state in the React.js. Counter value, whatever you are trying to declare this, right? That is considered as the state in the React.js. Okay. That is not the right way. Like you have just declared one counter and try to display it. But if it is a state, you should not maintain that way. Like I'll tell you what is the right way to maintain. Before I try to explain, is it clear? Like I'm just declaring one variable, I'm trying to display into the counter. So what is this? In React.js, there is a concept called as hooks. What is hooks? Hooks are nothing but functions. Hooks are nothing but functions in React.js. In hooks, there is nothing but function in React.js. There are many use cases of the hook, but let me start with a simple use case. First use case is to maintain the state of a component. Again, I am trying to repeat. What do you mean by state of a component? Here in this case, counter, for the counter, what is the state? In the counter component, what is the state? Counter. Yeah, counter is the state. Okay. The component, if it has its own, whatever the component has its own data. Now, if you see this counter is defined only for this. Maybe I can have something called as, now let me have, say, let name equal to Kumar. I can have even this also. And so many things. Now I can go and display that inside my. Yeah. So now if you see this component as state, what is the state contains? The component contains name and counter as the state. It contains two, like what is the component has? Now component state is nothing but the data specific to the component. What is the data specific to the component here? The data specific to the component is nothing but counter and name. This is what is called as state of the component. Now what React.js says is, if you want to maintain the state of a component, there is a hook called as useState hook. Okay. There is a hook called as useState hook. What do you mean by useState hook? This is the function. It is, I'll tell it's a function. This is the function. This is the function which helps you to manage the state. How it helps you to manage the state, I'm going to explain in a minute. So when you want to maintain the counter now, instead of going and declaring this as name, I'll try to remove this. If you want to manage the counter, first what you need to do is you need to go and import a hook called as useState. If you go and try to say useState, you are going to get that hook. Okay, so if you see, you are going and importing the useState hook. Now to maintain this counter, what React.js recommends is, it says, hey, now I'll try to remove this name because it's, I don't want to declare this. What it says, this, observe this syntax, what exactly I'm trying to do is constant count, comma set count, okay, equal to use state, and I can pass my initial state of the component over here. Okay. Now, what exactly it's going to do? So let me repeat that. We'll try to understand this use state example in detailed when I try to go and explain that over there. See, currently what I'm trying to do here is, if you want to maintain the state of a component, you need to use a special hook called as use state hook. What is a use state hook? Use state hook is nothing but a function. To this function, you give the initial value of the function. Initial value, what it will do? It will return two elements. When you say use state, that use state is going to return two elements. First element is nothing but the count variable, means a variable which is holding the count state. Second variable is nothing but the function to update the count. Second variable is nothing but the function to update the count. So second one is to update the, is a function to update the state. See, for now, I don't want you to go and worry about the second one. I'm just trying to remove that. Okay, just don't worry about the second one. What we do, we will try to use the use state, and this use state pass some initial value. It is going to give you the state, and it says this is a guided way of doing that. Okay, now if you want to hold any state of the component, don't do on the line number 11, do it in the way of line number 12. Why? I'm going to explain. Because there are so many use cases why you have to go and maintain that way. For now, this is the guideline from the React.js if you want to maintain the state of a component. Otherwise, you have to take by default. If you are trying to maintain any state of, like for example, I have only count. Like for example, even if you want to have one more thing called as name, again you have to say constant name equal to use state, pass the initial value, and maintain the state here. Okay, you can go and maintain the state. This is the guideline.
Let me demonstrate the internal workings of useState. For that, let me create a new file called as test_useState.js, where we are going to simulate that useState function.
Look, like I'll tell you, like what is this function? Use state. Okay, I'm trying to define what is the internal definition of the use state. I'm going to give it here, but I'm trying to name this as use state. It accepts some initial value. Okay, then what it will do is it will create one variable called as let data, and it will go and assign the initial value. Then it is going to create a function, okay, which is going to accept new value. Okay, what it will do is data equal to new value. Okay, now what it is going to return is function set value. Okay, is equal to new value. So now what it is going to do is it is going to return data comma set value. So this is the internal code of use state. So now what is this use state is doing? Internal code. It is accepting a value, initial value. Then internally it is trying to declare a variable and assigning that initial value. Then it declared a function called as set value, which is accepting some new value, and it is going and updating to the data. So now what are you returning as a part of this function? As a part of this function, you are returning an array with two values. The first value is nothing but the data, a variable which holds some data. Second variable is nothing but a function. What you see as set value is nothing but a function. So when you want to consume this, what exactly I'll do? So when I say constant, I'm going to say it as count comma set count, and I try to say AKU state, and I pass 20 here. So what exactly it is going to do? It is passing 20 here, and it is trying to apply a data equal to 20, and it is declaring one function set value. Whenever someone tries to update it, it is going to update this. So basically, the AKU state output is nothing but a array with two elements. First element is nothing but a variable holding the thing. Second element is nothing but a function to update that count. That's it.